Hypersalivation is when an individual produces too much saliva, therefore making it difficult to swallow as much saliva as they produce. This is something my mother claimed I had, which ultimately led to the removal of 2 of my salivary glands within my throat. As you can see, I still bear the scars on each of my neck from the removal. These glands specifically are called submandibular, and that is located within this region. So how my mother got the doctors to operate and remove this gland is by putting Orajel on my mouth and therefore producing more saliva while I was at the doctor's appointment. And with those claims alone, they removed them, therefore making this malpractice.
So this is an operative report from June 1st of 2004. The attending physician is Gregory S. Wisdom and assisting surgeon Timothy J. I'm thinking this says Schneider or Schweider. I can't see if that is an N or a W. It's kind of faded out, but I'm guessing Schneider. So this says preoperative diagnosis, hypersalivation, muscular dystrophy. And then it says down here, post-operative diagnosis, same thing, hypersalivation, muscular dystrophy. And she's saying now that this is malpractice of these doctors. And I don't know if these are the doctors that did the actual surgery to remove the glands at the one doctor's appointment that she's speaking of. But this is something I'm assuming is prior to that when she still has the glands. And the only reason why I'm familiar with this is because when I had cervical cancer, I had several different surgeries over the course of 18 months. The last one was an almost 13-hour operation. I had a radical hysterectomy, partial vagina removal, total pelvic lymphadenectomy. 2 years after that, even though I've been 5 years in remission now, thank God, I gotta say that I started having bladder issues from having all these organs removed. So I had to have a transvaginal pelvic mesh sling mid-urethral done. But I also had to have this, which is EMG guided Botox injections. And I didn't even know they did this all the way back in 2004. They redistribute the Botox and they actually inject it into a gland, an organ, a muscle to help paralyze it. So that way it relaxes it, especially if it is overactive. So for me, not having the organs support my bladder anymore, that it really helped with my bladder the next 2 years after my major operation, the last of 7 for the cancer that I had. It helped me to not have an overactive bladder because that became one of my issues after having the radical hysterectomy, the total pelvic lymphadenectomy, all of that stuff. So here, this clearly took place before she had the glands actually removed. It says that she had an EMG guided Botox injections into the parotid gland bilaterally and the submandibular salivary glands bilateral. It states Gypsy Rose that either says 12 or 13. It's kind of worn out. The type print is from the copy, so you can't see if this is 12 or 13-year-old female with a wide history of an as yet unspecified type of muscular dystrophy and difficulties with handling her own secretions at night. Primarily, she wakes up choking on her own secretions and has failed glycopyrrolate, whatever the heck that is. Some type of medication, it states, or some kind of therapy. It's also known as glycopyrronium. And it says that she had failed this type of therapy or medication before. So it states that her parotid glands are exactly where they should be. She's otherwise healthy, that her submandibular salivary glands were where they should be, that they did 100 cc's of the Botox redistributed, that she had no blood loss because obviously, it depends on how they do it. But if they're doing this, it's not actual like a surgical incision. So they actually tried medications which failed, and then they tried this. Botox injections to try to paralyze the glands and to calm them down. And this can sometimes last from 6 to 10 months before the Botox starts to wear off. Some people might have longer or shorter lasting effects of the Botox, depending on where they're having it injected in and what it's for. But also this, her mother, Claudine Blanchard, right here, requested her medical records from the prior 5 years. And it states here Gypsy's real date of birth, which is 7/27/91. And then up at the top, it says her name, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, with an E. And then it states 7/21/93. And then it says right here, other names or aliases used. Gypsy Rose Blanchard without an E, 7/27/92. And then down there, it's the 7/27/91 for her as well. And if you see down here at the bottom, her mom signed off on that, meaning that her mom was requesting records from Louisiana for the past 5 years. So if you have copies of your medical papers, you're not going to ever have your full medical records unless you request them from the doctor. You're going to have whatever the doctor or the hospital discharged you with. And then that's usually your copy of the paperwork, but that is not their records. So hospitals started transforming over into, digital records over 25 years ago. And especially states that have issues with weather, natural disaster type of weather, they started doing this as a precaution, just so that way they weren't having privacy rights issues and things like that. So this is funny to me because Dee Dee herself was telling them that Gypsy has a different alias. It says right up at the top, her name, Gypsy Rose Blanchard with the E, that they were using the date of birth 7/27/93, and it says alias is Gypsy Rose Blanchard without an E. And then another date of birth, and her real date of birth is down there, 7/27/91. And Dee Dee signs off on this to obtain records from Louisiana. So when her mom said that they came from Hurricane Katrina, she wasn't lying. Their apartment, clearly, if you've watched the documentaries, their apartment really was hit and devastated by Hurricane Katrina. They were airlifted. They were taken to Missouri, where then they were given shelter. And this is, way before they had the Habitat for Humanity house and whatnot. But when she said that her records were lost, she wouldn't be not telling the truth there, because her copies of any discharge paper or any papers that she got from Gypsy's doctors or from the hospitals, they would have been lost. Their apartment was destroyed, so she wouldn't have had her own copies. But this right here proves, the hospitals and the doctors are going to clearly have their copies still. So if you want your medical records, you have to put in a form like this to obtain copies of the actual medical records. But that's funny that right up there, she's clearly saying that, yeah, we've used this date of birth, we've used this date of birth, we've used this spelling, and we've used her real date of birth. And she's signing off on it. And this is 2007 when they are requesting those records. And you can do your own research, but you can see, thank you to Myra for giving this to me, but you can clearly see that they've had different systems, electronic systems, that they started even before the year 2000. And I remember in 1996, 97, 98 is when my high school had a whole new library with computers. Our newspaper class and English classes got brand new PCs in them as well. We also had internet connection, and that was a couple years before 2000. So they started doing digital records clearly around this time, which means that all the doctors and hospitals down there likely have all of her records, the actual medical records, their copies of the real full medical files on some kind of digital system. This right here also disproves that whole Australia 60 Minutes interview because she's the one who picked that. She's the one who got it. She's the one who gave it to him.